Welcome to the CompTIA A+ 220-1101 or Core 1 exam. This is Objective 3.4, BIOS. When you start your computer, something has to begin the process of loading an operating system. On most of our personal computers, this is the BIOS, or the Basic Input-Output System. This is the software that starts up when you hit the power button. And usually all of those things you see flying down the screen when you boot up are coming directly from the BIOS software. This is sometimes referred to as the firmware of your system. It's the system BIOS or the ROM BIOS, or in some cases the ROM or flash memory. These days we don't generally use read-only memory or ROM. Almost everything relating to the BIOS today is stored in flash memory. When you power on your system, it initializes the memory and the CPU, and it begins executing the code of the BIOS. After the CPU and the memory is initialized, you have the post or power on self-test. This is not a comprehensive hardware diagnostics. It's merely checking to see if you have memory, CPU, video, and some type of input such as keyboard or mouse. If all of those components are in place, your BIOS will look to see what you've configured to be the boot drive, and then it will look for the bootloader installed on that boot drive so that you can start the operating system. The flash memory used by the BIOS can usually be found on your motherboard. The motherboard has two separate BIOS configurations. One that is a main BIOS and one that is a backup BIOS config. This allows you to upgrade your BIOS on your system, and if something goes wrong with the upgrade, you can revert back to the previous version. If you're working on older computers, you might have a text-based BIOS. These are called legacy BIOS, and they've been around for about 25 years or more. Most older operating systems use these legacy BIOS. Here's a screenshot of what a legacy BIOS looks like. We can make very basic configuration changes from this legacy BIOS, but there's no way to change or upgrade the capability of this BIOS. There's no way to add additional drivers so that you can connect different network interfaces. And there's no way to somehow interact or add on to capabilities of the BIOS itself. The BIOS that's in our most modern computers are called UEFI, or UEFI. That stands for Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. And that's the standard of BIOS that we see today. This is a standard that was created by Intel. It's called the EFI standard, or the Extensible Firmware Interface standard. It allows many different manufacturers to create a BIOS that is all standardized with the same features and capabilities. It's designed to replace legacy BIOS. So any of the new computers that you use today will be using UEFI BIOS instead of the old legacy BIOS. Here's a screenshot of what a newer BIOS would look like. There's a lot more options and the interface is a lot more complex. You can see there's 4 different categories. You have main, security, advanced, and UEFI drivers. There are many different options available in the main section. You can look at the system information for this particular computer, including serial numbers, hardware configurations. You can look at the date and time and modify that, or if you want to perform some sort of diagnostics, that's possible too. I'll talk about the other categories here. In the security category, you can add a user or administrator password. There's an advanced tab at the top, so you can change the boot options or determine how the system will start. And you can also configure drivers to be specifically compatible for this BIOS. This allows you to install additional hardware such as drivers, and you can interact with components that could be connected to your computer. This is a totally different way for the BIOS to interact with your hardware compared to the legacy model. Okay, we're at the end of the objective. Here's a pop quiz. What does the acronym BIOS stand for? A, Basic Input-Output System. B, Basic Inter-Operating System. C, Basic Input Operating System. Or D, Basic Inline Operating System. If you'd answered A, you'd be correct. It stands for Basic Input-Output System, and that's how it was designed to work almost 30 years ago. Thank you for watching.